The Puck Drop Podcast starts now. Will Elias Pettersson be traded? My top 5 bold predictions for the NHL offseason, and much more. We're going to hop right into it. My top 5 bold predictions to start off the show. Number 5, the Florida Panthers will lose one of Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, Aaron Ekblad. I understand the salary cap's going up, but there's no way the Panthers can keep all 3 of these guys on the team. We've seen teams lose. Look at the Lightning. They lost a bunch of guys from their core from the 2 Stanley Cups they won back-to-back. I think Florida is going to lose at least one of Marchand, Ekblad, or Bennett. And you'll see which one I think is going to be the one they lose later on. Number 4, and this might be a little controversial, either Evan Bouchard or Jason Robertson of Evan Bouchard of the Edmonton Oilers or Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars will get offer sheeted by a team. And I have 3 teams in mind for both. Number 3 for Evan Bouchard, the Montreal Canadiens. It makes all the sense in the world for Bouchard to get offer sheeted by the Canadiens. They need a young veteran defenseman, and I think they would be willing to give up. It is 3, depending on the offer sheet they give him, it might be 3 first-round picks. And I would think Montreal would be fine with coughing up that amount of picks to trade for a guy to offer sheet Jason Robertson. To offer sheet Evan Bouchard. The third team I think should try to offer sheet Jason Robertson is the Carolina Hurricanes. We saw they tried it with Mikko Rantanen. Didn't really work. Does that mean it can't work with a guy like Robertson? I think it can. We saw what Jason Robertson did this year in Dallas. Now put him in a lineup on a line in Carolina with Andrei Svechnikov and Seth Jarvis. He'll put up a lot of points. So that's number 3. Number 2 team that should offer sheet Evan Bouchard, the LA Kings. They have the money to do it. They're further along in their rebuild than everybody thinks. And I would think they would be willing to give up 3 first-round picks for Evan Bouchard. If they offer sheet him and he ends up signing with them and Edmonton doesn't decide to match the offer sheet. Number 2 team that should offer sheet Jason Robertson, the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings need to add more scoring to their team, and I feel like adding Jason Robertson gives them that. And I would be willing to bet that Steve Yzerman would be glad to cough up 3 first-round picks or whatever the pick compensation is going to be to offer sheet and get Jason Robertson. Number 1 team that should offer sheet Evan Bouchard is the Detroit Red Wings. They also need help on defense, and I believe Evan Bouchard can give them that help on defense. And again, they would be willing to give up 3 first-round picks. And the number 1 team that should offer sheet Jason Robertson is the Montreal Canadiens. Yes, they have Slafkovsky, they have Caulfield, they have Suzuki. I feel like Jason Robertson would fit very well in Montreal. My number 3 bold prediction for the offseason for the NHL is the NHL draft starts tonight. And there's a bunch of teams that have 2 first-round picks. And one of those teams is the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I believe the Blue Jackets will use one of their picks to get in to the top 10, whether it be at 7 with Boston or anywhere in the top 10. My number 2 bold prediction is Erik Karlsson will be moved during the draft or in the offseason at some point to the Anaheim Ducks. And here's why. The Anaheim Ducks, they're looking to accelerate their rebuild even more. And I think they can do that by trading for Erik Karlsson. And you're not going to, you might have to take on the rest of his contract, but you also get the benefit of, you might get a reduced salary. You might have Pittsburgh, because they're going into a rebuild. You might ask Pittsburgh to eat some of his salary, and you could get a 4th or a 5th round pick. You would have to give up a 3rd or a 4th round pick for him. And my number 1 bold prediction for the NHL offseason is that Nikolai Ehlers signs with the Montreal Canadiens. Yes, I know I've talked about Montreal 3 times already in this video. Ehlers is not, as far as I know, what I've heard is Ehlers, he is still open to going back to Winnipeg, but he's also listening to other offers. And do you think Ehlers would be open to going across the country in Canada to Montreal, across the Providence to Montreal? I think he would. And I think he'd fit really good in Montreal. Now we get to the top free agents, and I have it in 2 parts. And let's get here. First, I have Sam Bennett, who is currently with the Panthers. I think that Sam Bennett will leave the Florida Panthers, and he's either going to sign with Detroit for 6 years at $7.8 million, or he gets 2 extra years if he does decide to stay with the Panthers, and he'll re-sign with Florida, 8 years, $13.6 million. The reason I gave him 7.5 with the 7.8 with the Red Wings is because they have some other contracts to kind of work out, like Simone Edvidson and Dylan Larkin if he wants an extension. And the next one is another Florida Panther, and it's Aaron Ekblad. And I think Ekblad, if he leaves Florida, he's going to get a massive raise in what he's making. And I think, obviously, we know the Ducks. I just talked about them earlier and how they should trade for Erik Karlsson. I think they should also splurge in free agency a little bit and go out and make a move and sign Aaron Ekblad and give him 6 years at $15.5 million. And if he doesn't shoot, and the reason I think he would be a perfect mentor for all the young defensemen the Ducks have, like Jackson Lacombe and all the other guys, all the young defensemen that are in Anaheim. Ekblad would be a perfect fit there. So there's 2 of the 3 guys from the Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cups, that I think could either leave or, in both cases, if they re-sign, I see both of them. In the case of Ekblad, I would see him staying 5 years, $12.5 million. And then we got John Tavares. This is the interesting one. It sounds like Tavares' time in Toronto is done. Finished. Over with. So there's 2 teams I have in mind that should go out and try to sign him. First is the Boston Bruins. They need they need to make a splash at free agency. And I know John Tavares doesn't really move the needle now at this point in his career, but I think the Bruins need to go out and sign him 2 years, $8 million, and because they're kind of retooling. So I feel like if they do that, it's a start of making smaller moves in free agency. Or if he wants to sign with a contender, which again I think Boston could contend next year in the Eastern Conference, in the Atlantic Division. There's that. Or he could sign a 3-year deal. He might want more in length, so maybe a 3-year deal for around $7 million with the Hurricanes. And I've talked about Carolina twice in the show. I think Carolina is another team that's going to be very active in free agency. And I want to hear your predictions on this or the trades I have in the comments below. We get to part 2. And the first one is Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner Ford, he was with Toronto. I think his time in Toronto is done. I don't think there's a way he goes back. I think they want to move on. And the first team I could see him signing with, and this team just traded for JJ Peterka, it is the Utah Mammoth. And I could see him going to Utah and getting a 7-year deal worth around $18 million. The Mammoth they have the money. Are they going to spend it? I think they are. They've already told us that they want to be contenders next year. And a big move like this, getting Mitch Marner, absolutely. That puts you in contention for the playoffs. Or if the Mammoth don't sign him, I see him going to Carolina, signing 7 years, getting $2.5 million less, $16 million for 7 years from the Hurricanes. I talked about the Hurricanes earlier. They should be in the Robertson sweepstakes. I think they should also be in the sweepstakes for Mitch Marner. And they need Rob Brind'Amour might be on the hot seat going into next season because they've lost in the conference semifinals the last 3 years. But if they make a big move like this and get Mitch Marner, I think that takes Rob Brind'Amour off the hot seat. The next one is Brock Besser. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I understand the Lightning have been linked to Brock Besser. I don't see it. I can't see Brock Besser going to the Lightning. I just can't. The Lightning, I know the salary cap's going up, but the Lightning have contracts that they have to get figured out. So here's the 2 teams that are, in my opinion, the front runners for Brock Besser. Number 1 is the Anaheim Ducks. And I talked about them earlier with Aaron Ekblad. Why not add a veteran forward in Brock Besser? 5 years, $12 million. And I will talk about the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, at the end of this, and what I liked about the collective bargaining agreement and what I didn't like. But Brock Besser, I feel like you have a lot of young forwards in Anaheim, and now with Trevor Zegras gone, you do traded to Philly, you have an opening, and you could sign a guy like Brock Besser to a 4 or 5 year deal for $11-12 million. Or if Besser doesn't want to go to Anaheim, he could go to a team that's actually contending right now in Montreal. 6 years, $14 million. And he would fit right in Montreal. Because Montreal, they have cap space. And I believe they could get off of Josh Anderson's contract after this year. I believe Josh Anderson's actually might be a free agent. So might be gone. So that would free up even more cap. And then you got the fifth with Noah Dobson of the Islanders. And rumors have already circulated. He wants out of New York. And he wants to be traded to Montreal. But they're not on my list for teams that should absolutely try to offer sheet him if he chooses restricted free agency. My first option is him re-signing with the Islanders for 8 years at around, I know he's going to want more, but realistically, I don't think he's the guy that should get $15, $16 million on the open market and an offer sheet. I think he's more around that 12 to 13, maybe 11 and between 11 and a half to $13 million. So if he re-signs with the Islanders, 8 years, $12 million, and that would be the most realistic, logical thing to happen here is Noah Dobson re-signing with the Islanders. If that doesn't happen, I think he gets offer sheeted and signed by the Flyers for 5 years at $11.5 million, and the Flyers give up 3 first-round picks. And the last guy is Capo Caco. I think he's either going to re-sign with the Kraken for 6 years at $6.5 million, and which honestly, that would make the most perfect sense ever, is him to re-sign with the Kraken, because he had a lot of success there once when he got traded there from the Rangers. Or, and this, I might sound a little crazy for this, what about the Buffalo Sabres going out and making a splash and signing Capo Caco 5 years, $5.5 million? I absolutely could see the Sabres doing that. They just traded for Jack Doan and Michael Kesselring in the trade that sent JJ Peterka to the Mammoth. I could see them, because they need to change this core somehow. And I think Capo Caco would fit. Now we got a couple trades. The first one is Elias Pettersson of the Canucks. I think he gets traded to the Hurricanes for a 3rd-round pick and Seth Jarvis. Let me tell you why this makes sense. Pettersson is going to be a free agent maybe this year. And if Vancouver doesn't think they can re-sign him, they might try to trade his signing rights to Carolina, and the return would be a 3rd-round pick and maybe Seth Jarvis or one of the younger guys on Carolina. If they say, oh no, Seth Jarvis is off, he's untouchable. That's my first trade. My second trade is JG Pageau of the Islanders. The Islanders are trying to get out of his contract, and I think he's going to get traded to the Wild for a 4th-round pick, and I might sound crazy for this, Marco Rossi. And this makes both these first 2 trades make too much sense. Both the Canucks and the Islanders are looking to get off of players that are going to be fairly expensive. Pageau's cap hit, I believe, is $3.5 million. But he's going to be looking for a pay raise and an extension. And I don't believe that the Islanders want to give him that kind of money and an extension. And then in the case of Pettersson, I said it a minute ago and I'll reiterate it. He is a guy that's probably looking for a healthy pay raise. And I don't know if the Canucks can afford it, because they got to give Quinn Hughes an extension. They got to give the guy I'm going to talk about in a second, Demko, an extension if they want to keep him. So that would make a guy like Elias Pettersson and Tyler Myers expendable. And speaking of the Canucks, the last guy I have on the trade block that I think these are trades that should happen, whether it be at the draft or during the offseason. The last trade I have that should happen is Thatcher Demko of the Canucks to the Red Wings for a third and a second round pick, whether it be this year's draft or a future draft. And now I'm going to talk about the CBA and the things I like about the CBA and don't. The first thing, I don't understand the new CBA because now, yes, I like that they're abolishing the LTIR and that they're going to have a salary cap when you get to the playoffs. But I don't like that they're adding 2 extra games during the regular season, which we've already seen all the injuries that happen during the regular season. And I think that's going to be the downfall of the NHL, is them adding those 2 extra regular season games and cutting the preseason down to 4 games. I do like the salary cap going up because there's going to be teams like, for example, the Lightning or the Avalanche, the Florida Panthers that have guys that are due for new contracts. And if the salary cap was to not go up, these teams would be in a bit. They would run into trouble with re-signing everybody. I think now with the salary cap going up over the next 2 years, this will help these teams that have guys that need to be re-signed. It'll help them re-sign those guys, and then the contracts will look better than they actually are. And as you see at the bottom of the screen, there's a text and voicemail line. Please send your questions in there. And the next Puck Drop podcast will be in 3 weeks, which is when we start the offseason and recap the first half of free agency. So send your questions in there and also put them in the comments because I do look at the comments after the videos. But that's going to wrap up this episode of the Puck Drop podcast. I'm your host, Alec Pecado, signing off. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday.